Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair with heavy chains around his wrists and ankles. The room was dark, except for a single bright light that hurt his eyes. 3 tall alien creatures stood in front of him. They looked like giant lizards, walking on 2 legs. Their skin was green and covered in scales that caught the light when they moved. The middle alien was the biggest. He wore a long black robe with gold symbols on it. His yellow eyes stared down at Jake without any kindness. This was Judge Vexther, the most feared judge in the Zephyrian Empire. Jake had heard stories about him from other prisoners. He never showed mercy to anyone. Jake was only 16 years old. His hands shook as he looked up at the judge. He thought about his little sister Lucy back home on New Haven. She was sick and getting worse every day. Their parents worked in the deep mines, from sunrise to sunset. They barely made enough money to buy food. That was why Jake had stolen the food rations from the supply depot. The judge's voice was deep and scary when he spoke. "Human child, you have been found guilty of theft. You took food that belonged to the Empire. Do you understand what you have done?" Jake's voice was quiet and shaky. "Yes, sir. But my sister is sick. She needed food. I was just trying to help her." The judge made a sound like an angry snake. "Your reasons do not matter. The law is the law. Theft is a crime that must be punished." One of the other aliens stepped forward. He was smaller than the judge, but still much bigger than Jake. "Your Honor, the boy is very young. Perhaps we could send him to work in the mines instead." Judge Vexther's eyes got brighter with anger. "No, I am tired of these weak humans thinking they can break our laws. This boy will serve as an example to all humans in our space. He will face the trials of the Grand Arena on Korath Prime." Jake's heart stopped beating for a moment. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Grand Arena. It was a place where criminals were sent to die fighting against the most dangerous creatures ever found. No one ever came back alive. The arena was built for entertainment and thousands of fencer. Aliens came to watch prisoners get torn apart by monsters. "Please," Jake said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I won't steal again. Just let me go back to my sister. She needs me." The judge stood up from his chair. He was so tall that his head almost touched the ceiling. "Your sister will learn what happens when humans break our laws. Guards, take him to the transport ship. He leaves for Korath Prime tomorrow." 2 guard aliens grabbed Jake's arms and lifted him up. They were strong, and their claws dug into his skin. Jake tried to pull away, but it was no use. As they dragged him toward the door, he turned back to look at the judge. "What will happen to Lucy?" he asked. The judge smiled, but it was not a nice smile. "That is no longer your concern, human child." The guards took Jake through long hallways made of cold metal. Other aliens watched him as they walked by. Some looked curious, others looked disgusted. Jake had learned that most aliens thought humans were weak and useless. They saw humans as nothing more than pests that had spread too far across the galaxy. The transport ship was huge and dark inside. Jake was pushed into a small cage with thick metal bars. The cage was so small he could barely lie down. Around him were other cages with different kinds of alien prisoners. Some were big and scary looking. Others were small and seemed just as frightened as Jake. An alien prisoner in the cage next to him looked over. This one looked almost human, but had blue skin and forearms. "You're very young to be going to the arena," he said in a voice that sounded sad. "I stole food from my sister," Jake replied. "What did you do?" "I killed someone who hurt my family," the blue alien said. "At least I had a good reason." The arena does not care about reasons, though. It only cares about blood and death. Jake felt sick to his stomach. "Have you ever seen the arena before?" The blue alien nodded slowly. I was there once as a spectator. I watched a warrior fight against the Shadow Maw. The warrior was strong and skilled with weapons. He lasted maybe 10 minutes before the creature tore him apart. What's the Shadow Maw? Jake asked, even though he was afraid to know. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy, another prisoner said from across the walkway. This one looked like a giant insect with 6 legs. It's bigger than a building and smart like a person. It has killed over 300 fighters in the past 10 years. No one has ever hurt it badly enough to escape. Jake closed his eyes and tried not to cry. He thought about Lucy in her small bed, coughing and getting weaker every day. He thought about his parents coming home from the mines and finding out what happened to him. They would be so sad and angry. The ship started to move, and Jake could feel it lifting off from the planet. Through a small window, he could see New Haven getting smaller and smaller until it was just a dot in space. He was leaving behind everything he had ever known. Days passed as the ship traveled through space. Jake barely ate the terrible food they gave him. He spent most of his time thinking about his family and wondering if he would ever see them again. The other prisoners tried to give him advice about fighting, but Jake was not a fighter. He was just a kid who had made a bad choice. Finally, the ship began to slow down. Through the window, Jake could see a red planet covered in cities and lights. This was Korath Prime, the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire. In the center of the biggest city was a massive round building that looked like a giant bowl. This was the Grand Arena Dot. The guards came and opened Jake's cage. They put new chains on him and led him off the ship. The air on Korath Prime was hot and dry. It smelled like metal and smoke. Thousands of aliens walked through the streets, all different shapes and sizes. They stared at Jake as the guards marched him toward the arena. The arena was even bigger, up close than it had looked from space. Its walls were made of black stone and covered in carvings of monsters and battles. Jake could hear the sound of a crowd cheering from inside. Someone was probably dying in there right now for their entertainment. The guards took him through a small door into the dark tunnels under the arena. The walls were covered in scratches and stains that Jake did not want to think about. They put him in a tiny cell with no windows and locked the door. "You fight tomorrow," one of the guards said. "Try to make it interesting for the crowd." Jake sat on the cold floor and pulled his knees up to his chest. Tomorrow he would walk into that arena and face the Shadow Maw. Tomorrow he would die far from home, and Lucy would never know what happened to her big brother who had only wanted to help her. He closed his eyes and began to hum the lullaby his mother used to sing to him and Lucy when they were scared. It was the only thing that made him feel a little bit better in the darkness. The morning came too quickly. Jake woke up when cold water splashed on his face. A guard alien stood outside his cell with an empty bucket in his claws. The guard was different from the others. He was smaller, and his scales were brown instead of green. "Time to go, human," the guard said. His voice was not as mean as the others. "Put these on." He pushed some clothes through the bars. They were simple brown pants and a shirt made of rough cloth. Nothing more. No armor, no weapons, no protection at all. Jake put them on with shaking hands. The guard opened the cell door and put light chains on Jake's wrists. "I have seen many prisoners go to the arena," he said quietly. "Most of them scream and cry. You are different." Jake did not know what to say. He was scared, but crying would not help him now. "What's her name?" he asked Dot. The guard looked surprised. "Prisoners do not usually ask my name. I am called Ren." "I'm Jake. Thank you for not being mean to me." Ren's eyes changed a little. "You are very young. I have a son about your age. This is not right, but I cannot change the law." They walked through the dark tunnels under the arena. Jake could hear the sound of the crowd getting louder and louder. Thousands of aliens were up there, waiting to watch him die. They had probably bought food and drinks to enjoy while they watched the show. Other tunnels connected to theirs. Jake saw more prisoners being led by guards. Some were big and strong-looking. Others were small and scared like him. All of them were going to the same place. All of them were going to die. They stopped at a big metal door. Above it were words written in the alien language, but Jake could guess what they said. Beyond this door was the arena floor where so many had died before him. "Listen to me," Ren said, speaking very quietly so the other guards could not hear. "When you go out there, do not run around like a scared animal. The Shadow Maw likes to hunt things that run. If you stay calm, maybe it will be quick." Jake nodded. "Will you tell my family what happened to me if you ever meet them?" Ren looked sad. "I will try." The door opened with a loud grinding sound. Bright light poured in, hurting Jake's eyes after the darkness of the tunnels. He could hear the crowd roaring like an ocean storm. Someone pushed him forward, and he stumbled into the arena. The arena floor was huge, maybe as big as 10 football fields. The ground was covered in sand and rocks. Pieces of broken metal and old bones were scattered everywhere. Around the edge were tall walls made of smooth stone. Above the walls were rows and rows of seats filled with aliens of every shape and size Jake had ever seen. The crowd got louder when they saw him. Some of them were pointing and laughing. A human boy in the arena was probably very funny to them. They had never seen anything so small and weak in their great arena before. High above the crowd was a special box with a golden roof. Inside sat the most important alien Jake had ever seen. He was huge, even bigger than Judge Vexther. His scales were black and shiny, and he wore a crown made of red jewels. This had to be Emperor Zolthok himself, the ruler of the entire Zephyrian Empire. The Emperor stood up and raised his hand. The crowd became quiet. His voice was so loud it echoed around the entire arena. "Citizens of the Empire," he said, "today we have something special. A human child has dared to steal from us. He thinks he can break our laws without punishment. Today he will learn what happens to those who defy the Empire." The crowd cheered and screamed. Jake felt very small and alone in the middle of the huge arena. He looked up at the Emperor and saw him smile. It was a cold, mean smile that made Jake's skin crawl. "Release the Shadow Maw," the Emperor commanded. On the opposite side of the arena, a gate began to open. It was massive, big enough for a house to fit through. The sound of grinding metal filled the air. Behind the gate was only darkness. Jake heard something moving in that darkness, something big. He could hear claws scraping on stone and the sound of heavy breathing. The crowd became very quiet, like they were holding their breath. 2 red eyes peered in the darkness. They were as big as dinner plates, and they glowed like fire. The eyes looked right at Jake across the arena. Then more of the creature came into the light. The Shadow Maw was the most terrifying thing Jake had ever seen. It was bigger than a house, maybe bigger than 2 houses. Its body was covered in black scales that seemed to drink in the light around them. It had 6 legs, each one as thick as a tree trunk. At the end of each leg were claws longer than swords. The creature's head was long and narrow, filled with rows of sharp teeth. Its neck was thick and muscular. When it moved, Jake could see the power in every step. This was not just a big animal. This was a perfect killing machine. But the worst part were its eyes. They were not the eyes of a dumb beast. They were smart eyes. The Shadow Maw was looking at Jake like it was thinking about the best way to kill him. It was planning his death. The creature stepped fully into the arena, and the ground shook under its weight. It opened its mouth and made a sound that was part roar and part something else. The sound was so loud and scary but some people in the sea. Crowd screamed. Jake stood in the middle of the arena, a small human boy facing a monster that had killed hundreds of trained warriors. He knew he was going to die. There was no way he could fight this thing. He could not even run fast enough to get away from it. The Shadow Maw began to walk toward him. Each step made the ground shake. Its red eyes never left Jake's face. The crowd started cheering again, excited to see the kill. But Jake did something that surprised everyone. Instead of running or screaming, he sat down on a rock. He closed his eyes and began to hum the lullaby his mother used to sing, the same song he had hummed in his cell the night before. The Shadow Maw stopped walking. It tilted its massive head to one side, like it was confused. The crowd became quiet again, not understanding what they were seeing. Jake kept humming, even though tears were running down his face. He thought about Lucy lying in her bed, weak and sick. He thought about his parents working in the dark mines. He thought about how much he loved them and how sorry he was that he had failed them. The Shadow Maw came closer, but it was moving slowly now. Not like a predator hunting, but like something that was curious. It lowered its huge head until it was just a few feet away from Jake. Jake could feel the creature's hot breath on his face. He could smell its wild, dangerous scent. But he kept humming and kept his eyes closed. If he was going to die, he wanted to die thinking about the people he loved. Something warm and rough touched his hand. Jake opened his eyes and saw that the Shadow Maw had touched him with its nose. The creature was looking at him with those intelligent red eyes, but they did not look angry anymore. They looked curious, almost sad. Jake slowly reached out his hand and touched the creature's snout. The skin was warm and covered in small scales. The Shadow Maw did not pull away. Instead, it made a low rumbling sound that was not quite a growl. The crowd was completely silent now. Even Emperor Zolfuk was leaning forward in his golden box, trying to understand what was happening. "It's okay," Jake whispered to the creature. "I know you don't want to hurt me. You're just lonely, aren't you?" The Shadow Maw's eyes seemed to soften. It lowered its head even more and rested it on the ground next to Jake. The boy reached out and gently touched the creature's neck. Suddenly, gates around the arena opened and smaller creatures ran out. They were still bigger than Jake, but much smaller than the Shadow Maw. They had sharp claws and teeth, and they were running straight toward the boy. The Shadow Maw's head snapped up, and it let out a roar that shook the entire arena. It moved faster than Jake thought possible, destroying the smaller creatures before they could reach him. In seconds, all the other predators were dead. The great creature returned to Jake's side and settled down next to him, creating a protective wall with its body. Jake smiled and patted its neck. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I think we're going to be friends." The crowd in the arena was completely silent. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. For 10 years, the Shadow Maw had been the most feared creature in the galaxy. It had killed every single warrior that faced it. But now it was lying next to a human boy like a giant pet. Emperor Zolfok stood up in his golden box. His face showed anger and confusion. "What is happening?" He shouted at the arena officials below him. "Why is the creature not killing the human?" The officials looked at each other with worried faces. They had never seen anything like this before. One of them, a tall alien with purple skin, spoke into a communication device. "Release the firewolves," he ordered. Jake heard the sound of gates opening again. This time, 6 creatures ran into the arena. They looked like wolves, but they were bigger, and their fur was red like flames. Smoke came from their mouths, and their eyes glowed yellow. They spread out in a circle around Jake and the Shadow Maw. The Shadow Maw lifted its head and looked at the fire wolves. It made a low warning sound that rumbled through the ground. The Firewalls stopped moving and lowered their heads. They could sense the power of the great predator. "Go ahead," Jake said softly to his new friend. "I know you have to protect us." The Shadow Maw stood up slowly. Even though it was huge, it moved. Like a dancer. It looked at each fire Volth, and Jake could see the intelligence in its eyes. It was not just going to attack wildly. It was making a plan. The firewolves attacked all at once. They were fast and their claws were sharp. But the Shadow Maw was faster. It moved like black lightning, its claws cutting through the air. In less than a minute, all 6 fire wolves were dead. The creature returned to Jake's side and lay down again. It was not even breathing hard. Killing 6 dangerous predators had been easy for it. Jake reached out and touched the Shadow Maw's neck. "Again, you're amazing," he said. "But you don't like being forced to kill, do you?" The creature made that soft rumbling sound again. It was like a cat purring, but much deeper. Jake somehow knew that the Shadow Maw understood what he was saying. "You've been trapped here for years," Jake continued. "Fighting and killing because they make you do it. You must be so tired of it." The Shadow Maw's red eyes looked into Jake's brown ones. There was something passing between them, something that had nothing to do with words. Jake could feel the creature's loneliness and pain. It had been alone for so long, forced to kill for the entertainment of others. The arena officials were panicking now. They released more creatures, metal spiders with poison, flying beasts with razor wings, and even a small dragon that breathed ice. But the result was always the same. The Shadow Maw would destroy anything that threatened Jake, then return to his side. Emperor Zalthuk was no longer angry. Now he looked interested. He spoke to one of his advisors, a thin alien with silver skin. "I want to know more about this human," he said. "There is something different about him." Down in the arena, Jake was talking quietly to the Shadow Maw. He told it about Earth, the planet where humans came from. He described the blue skies and green forests. He talked about his sister Lucy and how she liked to sing. He told the creature about his parents and how hard they worked. The Shadow Maw listened to every word. Sometimes it would make soft sounds, like it was trying to talk back. Jake began to understand that the creature had its own language of growls and rumbles. "I wish I could take you away from here," Jake said. "You don't belong in a cage. You should be free." The creature's eyes brightened at the word free. It understood what Jake meant. After an hour, the arena officials gave up trying to make the Shadow Maw kill Jake. They had released 15 different creatures, and all of them were dead. The boy and the predator sat together in the middle of the arena floor, surrounded by the bodies of the fallen beasts. Emperor Zalthuk stood up and raised his hand. The crowd became quiet again. "Citizens," he said, "we have witnessed something that has never happened before. This human child has done what no warrior could do. He has tamed the untamable." Some people in the crowd cheered, but others looked confused and angry. They had come to see blood and death, not this strange friendship. "The human will be taken to the palace," the emperor continued. "I wish to speak with him myself." Guards came into the arena, but they moved very carefully. They were afraid of the Shadow Maw. The creature watched them with its red eyes, but did not move. It seemed to understand that they were not going to hurt Jake. "I have to go," Jake said to the Shadow Maw, "but I'll come back if I can." The creature made a sad sound and touched Jake's hand with its nose again. It did not want him to leave. Jake was taken through the tunnels under the arena. The guards were different now. They treated him with respect instead of like a prisoner. Word had spread quickly about what happened in the arena. Ren was waiting for him at the exit. The guard alien looked amazed. "I have worked here for 20 years, he said. "I have never seen anything like that." "How did you do it?" Jake shrugged. I just treated it like a friend instead of a monster. I think it was lonely. They put Jake in a much nicer cell while they waited for orders from the Emperor. This one had a bed and a window. Jake could see the arena from his window. He wondered if the Shadow Maw was back in its cage, probably missing him. A few hours later, a group of important-looking aliens came to get Jake. They wore fancy clothes and spoke in polite voices. They took him through the city in a flying vehicle. The buildings were tall and made of shiny metal. Aliens of all kinds walked through the streets below. The Imperial Palace was the biggest building Jake had ever seen. It was made of white stone and had hundreds of windows. Gardens with strange alien plants surrounded it. Everything was beautiful and expensive looking. Inside the palace, Jake was taken to a large room with a high ceiling. The walls were covered in paintings of great battles and alien heroes. At the far end of the room was a throne made of black stone. Emperor Zolthuk sat on it, looking down at Jake with interest. "Come closer, human child," the Emperor said. Jake walked across the room. His bare feet made no sound on the smooth floor. He stopped in front of the throne and looked up at the most powerful being in the galaxy. "What is your name?" The Emperor asked. "Jake Morrison, Your Majesty." "Tell me, Jake Morrison, how did you tame the Shadow Maw?" Jake thought about his answer. "I didn't tame it, sir. I just showed it kindness. It's been alone for so long. All it wanted was a friend." The Emperor leaned forward. "Do you know what you have done? That creature has killed hundreds of my best warriors. It has never shown mercy to anyone." "Maybe nobody ever showed mercy to it," Jake said quietly. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it was not a mean smile like before. "You are an interesting child. My scientists tell me that humans have a rare ability. You can bond with other species in ways that most aliens cannot. Is this true?" "I don't know, sir. I just try to be kind to everyone." "Would you like to see your friend again?" Jake's heart jumped. "Yes, please." The Emperor stood up from his throne. "Then come with me. I have a proposition for you." They walked through the palace to a large viewing room. Through a big window, Jake could see down into the arena. The Shadow Maw was there, pacing back and forth. It looked restless and sad. "It has not eaten since you left," the Emperor said. "My beastmasters are worried it might die." Jake pressed his face against the window. He could see his friend was unhappy. "Please let me go to it." "Perhaps," the Emperor said. "But first, we must talk about your future." Jake turned to look at the Emperor. "What do you mean?" "I am offering you a choice, Jake Morrison. You can work for me as a beast tamer. You will travel to different worlds and help me control dangerous creatures. In return, your family will be freed from their mining contracts. They will live on a paradise world where your sister can get the best medical care." Jake's heart began to beat faster. "You would really do that?" "I would, but there is a price. You must leave your old life behind. You will belong to the Empire." Now, Jake looked back at the Shadow Maw. The creature had stopped pacing and was looking up at the window. Somehow, it knew Jake was there. "What if I say no?" Jake asked. The Emperor's voice became cold. "Then your sister will be brought here too. Face her own trial in the arena. She is sick and weak. She would not last 10 seconds. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "You would hurt a sick little girl?" "I would do what the law requires." "The choice is yours, Jake Morrison." Jake looked at the Shadow Maw again. His friend was still staring up at the window, waiting for him to return. Jake made his decision. "I'll do it," he said. "But only if I can work with the Shadow Maw. We stay together." The Emperor smiled. "Agreed. Welcome to the Empire, Jake Morrison." Jake was given new clothes and a room in the palace. It was the nicest place he had ever lived. The bed was soft and the food was good, but he was not happy. He missed his family, and he worried about the Shadow Mole. On his second day in the palace, Jake was taken to meet Dr. Voss. Looked sad. She is stable, but the doctors say she needs a special treatment. It is very expensive. The Empire is providing basic care, but not the advanced medicine she needs. Jake felt angry. The Emperor promised she would get the best care. He promised she would get care, Dr. Voss said carefully. But he did not specify what kind. Jake realized he had been tricked. The Emperor was keeping his promise in the smallest way possible. Lucy was alive and getting some treatment, but not enough to make her truly well. That night, Jake sat with Titan in their chamber beneath the palace. He told the great creature about his worry for Lucy. "I don't know what to do," Jake said. "I want to help her, but I'm trapped here. If I try to leave, the Emperor will hurt my family." Titan made a deep sound that Jake had never heard before. It was sad and angry at the same time. The creature understood Jake's pain. A few days later, they were sent on another mission, this time to a jungle planet called Verdania. The report said that something was attacking the Imperial Research Station there. Scientists were disappearing, and strange sounds came from the jungle at night. Jake and Titan arrived at Verdania on a small transport ship. The planet was covered in thick green forests, and the air was hot and humid. Strange birds with colorful feathers flew overhead. The research station was a collection of white buildings surrounded by a high fence. Dr. Kim, the station leader, met them at the gate. She was a human woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Jake was surprised to see another human. "Thank goodness you're here," Dr. Kim said. "We've lost 6 people in the past month. Whatever is out there is smart and dangerous. What are you researching here?" Jake asked. "We're studying the plant life. Some of these plants have amazing healing properties. We think we can make medicines that could cure diseases that have never been cured before." Jake's heart jumped. What kind of diseases? All kinds. Even the wasting sickness that affects some human children. Jake knew about wasting sickness. It was what Lucy had. If these plants could cure it, maybe he could help his sister. That night, Jake and Titan went into the jungle to look for whatever was threatening the station. The jungle was full of sounds, insects buzzing, birds calling, and the rustle of leaves in the wind. But there was something else, too. A sound that didn't belong. They followed the sound deeper into the jungle. Titan's senses were much better than Jake's, and the creature led the way through the thick plants and vines. Finally, they found what they were looking for. In a clearing surrounded by tall trees was a creature unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was about the size of a horse, but it looked like it was made of living shadow. Its body seemed to shift and change as it moved. It had bright yellow eyes that glowed in the darkness, but the creature was not alone. Around it were 6 smaller versions of itself. A family. Shadow beasts, Jake whispered. The reports didn't say they were babies. The adult shadow beast saw them and made a threatening sound. It moved to protect its young ones behind it. Jake could see that it was scared, not angry. "It's okay," Jake said softly. "We're not going to hurt your children." The shadow beast tilted its head, surprised by Jake's gentle tone. It had probably never heard a kind voice from any of the researchers. Jake sat down on the ground to make himself less threatening. Titan lay down beside him. Slowly, the shadow beast relaxed. "You've been taking the scientists because they were getting too close to your babies," Jake said. "You're just protecting your family." The shadow beast made a soft sound and nodded its head. Jake was amazed. It really understood him. "I understand," Jake said. "I have a sister I'm trying to protect too. We're both just trying to take care of the people we love." The shadow beast moved closer. Its strange shifting body was beautiful in the moonlight. It touched Jake's hand with what might have been a nose or a paw. Its touch was warm and tingly. Jake felt something in his mind, images and feelings that weren't his own. He could see through the shadow beast's eyes. He saw the researchers getting closer and closer to the hidden nest where the babies lived. He felt the parents' fear and desperation. "I'll make sure they stay away from your home," Jake promised. "Your children will be safe." The shadow beast made a happy sound and called to its babies. They came out from behind the trees, curious about these strange visitors, who meant no harm. Jake and Titan spent the rest of the night playing with the young shadow beasts. They were playful and intelligent, like puppies made of living darkness. When morning came, Jake returned to the research station. He told Dr. Kim about the shadow beast family and asked her to move the research to a different part of the jungle. "Of course," Dr. Kim said. "I had no idea we were threatening their young. We'll set up in the eastern sector instead." But before Jake left Verdania, Dr. Kim gave him something. It was a small vial filled with liquid made from the healing plants. "This is experimental," she said quietly, "but it might help someone with wasting sickness. Don't tell anyone I gave this to you." Jake hid the vial in his clothes. Finally, he had something that might help Lucy, but now he faced a bigger problem. How could he get it to her when he was trapped in service to the Empire? The answer came from an unexpected source. While they were returning to Korath Prime, their ship received a coded message. It was from the Human Resistance, the secret organization that was fighting against alien rule. The message was short: "Your parents are dead. Mining accident. Lucy is in Imperial Medical Facility 7. We can help you rescue her, but you must choose soon. Meet us on Titan Base if you want to save your sister." Jake felt like his world was ending. His parents were gone forever. Lucy was alone and getting sicker. The Empire had lied to him about everything. He looked at Titan, who seemed to sense his pain. The great creature made a sad sound and gently touched Jake's shoulder with its massive head. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He was going to save Lucy, even if it meant betraying the Empire, even if it meant becoming a fugitive, even if it meant war. "Are you with me, buddy?" he asked Titan. The creature's red eyes blazed with determination. It made a sound that Jake knew meant always. Jake Morrison, the boy who had been thrown into an arena as punishment, was about to become something the galaxy had never seen before. A human who could command the loyalty of the most dangerous predator alive. A boy who would fight an empire to save his sister. The real battle was just beginning. Kira Voss. She was different from the other aliens he had met. She was smaller, and her skin was pale blue. Her eyes were kind, and she spoke in a gentle voice. "Hello, Jake," she said. "I am a scientist. I study different species and how they think. I want to understand what happened between you and the Shadow Maw." They sat in a room filled with books and strange machines. Dr. Voss asked Jake many questions about his life on Earth and his family. She seemed especially interested in how humans treated animals. "On Earth, do humans keep creatures as companions?" she asked. "Yes," Jake said. "We call them pets. Dogs and cats mostly. They live with us, and we take care of them." Dr. Voss wrote notes on a tablet. "And these animals are happy with this arrangement?" "I think so. My neighbor had a dog named Buddy. He loved that dog more than anything, and Buddy loved him back." "Fascinating," Dr. Voss said. "Most alien species do not form these kinds of bonds. We see other creatures as tools or food or enemies, but humans seem to see them as equals." Jake nodded. "My dad always said that just because something is different doesn't mean it's bad. He taught me to be kind to everyone." Dr. Voss smiled. "Your father sounds like a wise man. Tell me, When you first saw the Shadow Maw, were you afraid? Of course. I was afraid. It's huge and scary. But I was also sad. Sad? Why? Jake thought about his answer. Because I could see in its eyes that it was lonely. It didn't want to be a monster. It just wanted to be understood. Dr. Voss put down her tablet and looked at Jake carefully. You have a gift, Jake. Your brain works differently from most people. You can sense emotions in other creatures, and they can sense yours. This is very rare. Is that why the Shadow Maw didn't kill me? Yes, you showed it something it had never experienced before, compassion, and it responded to that. The next day, Jake was finally allowed to see the Shadow Maw again. They met in a large underground chamber beneath the palace. The creature was waiting for him, and when it saw Jake, it made that happy rumbling sound. Hey there, big guy, Jake said, walking over to touch its snout. I missed you too. The Shadow Maw lowered its head so Jake could reach it better. The boy noticed that the creature looked thinner than before. Dr. Voss says you haven't been eating. You have to take care of yourself. The Shadow Maw made a soft whining sound. It had been too sad to eat without its friend. I'm here now, Jake said. And I'm not going anywhere. We're going to be a team. From that day forward, Jake and the Shadow Maw spent every day together. The creature, which Jake had started calling Titan, began to eat again. It seemed happier and more relaxed. Jake learned that Titan was incredibly intelligent. It could understand complex instructions and remember things from weeks ago. It could even. Jake stared at the message for a long time. His parents were dead. The Empire had lied to him about keeping them safe. Lucy was sick and alone in some Imperial medical facility. Everything the Emperor had promised was a lie. He was sitting in his room on the transport ship, heading back to Korath Prime. Titan was lying on the floor beside him, too big to fit on any of the furniture. The creature could sense Jake's sadness and kept making soft sounds to comfort him. They're gone, Titan, Jake said quietly. My mom and dad are dead. And Lucy, I don't even know if she's still alive. Titan lifted his massive head and gently touched Jake's face with his snout. The touch was warm and comforting. In his own way, the creature was trying to tell Jake that he wasn't alone. Jake pulled out the small vial of medicine Dr. Kim had given him. The liquid inside glowed with a soft green light. This might be the only thing that could save Lucy, but how could he get it to her? The message had mentioned Titan Base. Jake had heard of it from other prisoners back in the arena. It was a secret meeting place for the human resistance, hidden somewhere in the asteroid belt near the edge of Imperial space. If he could get there, maybe the resistance could help him save Lucy. But leaving would mean betraying the Empire. It would mean becoming a fugitive. Worse, it would mean putting Titan in danger too. I can't ask you to come with me, Jake said to the creature. If we run away, they'll hunt us forever. You could have a safe life here if you stay. Titan made a sound that was almost like laughter. The creature stood up and walked over to the wall. With one claw, it scratched a mark into the metal. Then, it scratched another mark next to the first one. The two marks were touching. Jake understood. Together, he said. You're saying we stay together no matter what? Titan nodded his great head and made that happy rumbling sound. Jake made his decision. That night, when the ship stopped at a supply station, he and Titan escaped. The station was busy with traders and travelers from all over the galaxy. In the confusion, a boy and his large pet could slip away without being noticed right away. Jake used his knowledge of Imperial ships to steal a small cargo vessel. It wasn't much, but it was fast, and it had enough fuel to reach the asteroid belt. As they flew away from the station, he could hear emergency signals being sent out. The Empire would be looking for them soon. The journey to Titan Base took 3 days, Jake had to be careful to avoid Imperial patrol ships. Titan stayed calm during the trip, even though the small ship was uncomfortable for such a large creature. Titan Base was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid. From the outside, it looked like just another piece of space rock. But inside, it was a complete station with living areas, workshops, and meeting rooms. The humans who met Jake at the docking bay were different from any he had seen before. They were strong and confident, not beaten down like the mining families. He knew their leader was a woman named Captain Maria Santos. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but Jake could see she was tough. "Jake Morrison," she said, shaking his hand. "We've been hearing stories about you all across the galaxy. A boy who tamed Shadowmaw. I need your help," Jake said. "My sister is sick, and the Empire has her. I have medicine that might cure her, but I don't know where she is." Captain Santos nodded. "We know about Lucy. She's in Medical Facility 7 on the planet Helios. It's heavily guarded, but we have people working there. We can get her out." "What's the catch?" Jake asked. He had learned not to trust easy promises. "The catch is that once we do this, there's no going back. The Empire will never stop hunting you. You'll be fighting them for the rest of your life." Jake looked at Titan, who was lying nearby listening to everything. The creature's red eyes were calm and ready. "I'm already fighting them," Jake said. "They killed my parents and they're letting my sister die. I'll do whatever it takes to stop them." Captain Santos smiled. "Good, because we have a plan and we're going to need your help." The plan was daring and dangerous. A team of resistance fighters would attack the medical facility as a distraction. While the Imperial forces were busy fighting them, Jake and Titan would sneak in through the underground tunnels and rescue Lucy. "Why do you need Titan?" Jake asked. "Because the facility is guarded by war beasts," Captain Santos explained. "Giant armored creatures that the Empire uses as living weapons. Regular weapons can't hurt them, but Titan can fight them." Jake felt sick. "You want Titan to fight other creatures?" "Only if we have to. We're hoping the war beasts will recognize Titan's dominance and back down without a fight." Jake hoped so too. He didn't want Titan to have to kill again unless there was no choice. They traveled to Helios in a small fleet of resistance ships. The planet was mostly covered in cities and factories. Medical Facility 7 was built into a mountain on the northern continent. It looked more like a fortress than a hospital. Jake and Titan approached through underground caves that connected to the facility's lower levels. The resistance had maps showing the way to the medical ward where Lucy was being held. As they moved through the tunnels, Jake could hear the sound of battle above them. The resistance attack had begun. Alarms were ringing, and he could hear the sound of weapons firing. They reached a large underground chamber beneath the medical facility. 3 tunnel openings led up toward the building, but the chamber was not empty. 3 huge creatures were waiting for them. The war beasts were even bigger than Titan. They looked like giant bears covered in metal armor. Their claws were as long as swords, and their eyes glowed red with artificial intelligence. These were not natural creatures. They had been changed by Imperial science to make them perfect weapons. The war beasts saw Jake and Titan and roared in challenge. They spread out to block all the tunnel entrances. There was no way around them. "Easy, Titan," Jake said. "Let's see if we can talk to them first." Titan stepped forward and made a deep sound that Jake had never heard before. It was not a roar or a growl. It was something else. A sound that seemed to say, "I am the Alpha here." The 3 war beasts stopped roaring. They looked at Titan with confusion. They had been created to be the ultimate predators, but here was something even more dangerous than they were. The largest war beast made a questioning sound. Titan answered with another deep call. Jake watched in amazement as the creatures seemed to have a conversation without words. Finally, the largest war beast lowered its head in a gesture of respect. The other two did the same. They moved aside, clearing a path to the tunnels. "Amazing," Jake whispered. "They're letting us pass." But as they reached the tunnel entrance, Jake heard a new sound. Heavy footsteps were coming down from above. Imperial soldiers were coming to check on their war beasts. The war beasts heard the soldiers, too. They looked at each other, then at Titan and Jake. The largest one made a decision. It moved to block the tunnel behind them, protecting their retreat. The other two did the same at the other entrances. Jake realized what was happening. The war. Beasts were choosing to help them instead of helping the Empire. Titan had not just dominated them, he had freed them. Jake and Titan climbed through the tunnel toward the medical facility. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of fighting. As the war beasts turned on their Imperial handlers, the medical ward was chaos. Nurses and doctors were running around trying to secure their patients while the battle raged outside. Jake found Lucy's room using the map the Resistance had given him. Lucy was lying in a bed connected to several machines. She looked so small and pale. Her dark hair was thin and her breathing was shallow. But she was alive. "Lucy," Jake said softly, touching her hand. "It's me. It's Jake." Lucy opened her eyes slowly. When she saw Jake, she smiled weakly. "Jake? Is it really you? I thought you were dead." "I'm here to take you home," Jake said. He pulled out the vial of medicine Dr. Kim had given him. "This is going to make you better." He helped Lucy drink the medicine. Almost immediately, some color returned to her cheeks. The medicine was working. "Can you walk?" Jake asked. "I think so," Lucy said. Sitting up slowly, Jake helped her out of bed and wrapped a blanket around her. As they reached the door, they heard shouting in the hallway. Imperial soldiers were coming. Titan appeared in the doorway, having squeezed through the corridors that were too small for him. He was scraped and dusty, but unharmed. When he saw Lucy, he made a gentle sound. "Lucy, this is Titan," Jake said. "He's my friend. He's going to help us get out of here." Lucy stared at the massive creature with wide eyes. "He's beautiful," she said. Titan lowered his head so Lucy could touch his snout. She giggled when his warm breath tickled her hand. They made their way back through the facility, with Titan clearing the path ahead of them. The war beasts had done their job well. Most of the Imperial soldiers were busy dealing with them, instead of looking for escaping prisoners. At the cave entrance, Captain Santos was waiting with a small ship. "Hurry," she called. "Imperial reinforcements are coming." As they flew away from Helios, Jake looked back at the medical facility. Smoke was rising from several buildings, and he could see explosions in the distance. The Resistance had succeeded, but at a cost. "The war beasts," Jake said. "What will happen to them?" "They're free now," Captain Santos said. "Thanks to Titan. They remember what they used to be before the Empire changed them. Some of them will probably escape to the wild planets." Jake felt sad for the CRE.